Hey everybody, it's Brandon Dawson here at the B. Dawson Show. I'm excited this week to have my business partner and best friend Mason Walker join me on this show because we're going to be talking about how to become the perfect intrapreneur, the 10X employee, the person that can ascend and make the greatest impact in an organization, because we've been talking about the 4preneurs. And so I asked Mason, he was my first employee, right?
Absolutely.
And we went through a lot to land on him just choosing to join me. And he ascended from being the first employee at Audigy to being president. And during that window of ascension, he had 8 different bosses at different times and yet managed to outperform them culturally, operationally, and financially. What we want to talk about is how you can become a 10X employee or an intrapreneur in an organization.
Well said.
So Mason, let's talk about how we first met. Not on the dating site. But how did I first meet you?
Not online. I was just finishing up my undergrad in business at the University of Portland. I was not impressed with the career fairs, the job fairs. If anything, I was sitting there thinking to myself, how have I invested 4 years of my life, 6 figures of income from my family and from the university, to be able to have this opportunity to graduate and not be inspired by what I'm looking at when it comes to the marketplace. So I thought I need to get out there and I need to build a network, and I need to be able to make those connections, get out in the community and meet people. So I thought, what better way of doing that than being able to be at the Ferrari and Maserati dealership? Yeah. Exactly. Anybody spending $250,000 to $500,000 on discretionary product like a car, I want to know them and I want them to know me. What I did not know is I was going to run into somebody sitting right here across from me that after several months of being there, I met a lot of people, a lot of individuals with a lot of money, and I would say most of them came in and it was very transactional. They were in, they were out. If anything, they looked at me like, you're just an employee here. Where's my car? And you were the first one that truly engaged with me and asked me a series of questions. And it was on a test drive, and I'll never forget some of the questions.
Well,
that
first
you
of all, I
asked.
walked in. So to frame this for people to understand, if you're the entrepreneur, every single day I was out trying to find talent to introduce myself in their environment, to introduce myself to challenge, to see how sharp they were, because I was actually setting up recruiting for my business. And I wanted to meet people that I felt like had great people skills, had ambition, and could like put themselves in an uncomfortable situation. Right. So I left a half hour early to pick up my daughter from school. And I was like, oh, there's a Ferrari Maserati dealership. I think I was driving a Corvette or a Mercedes at the time. Mercedes. And so I pulled in there just to see, I wonder who's working in here, right? I wonder who I could maybe approach. And I came in and met you, and you showed me some things. And I said, well, I don't really see anything here I'm interested in. And I walked out the door, and all of a sudden the door opened. And you said, hey, I have a question for you. Have you ever seen the Jaguar XK R100 limited edition? And you said to me, I guarantee you'd never want to own this car because it's not reliable, but you'll at least want to have driven it once in your lifetime. That's what you said. Yeah. And I said, all right, I got a few minutes. Let's go drive this thing. It was a beast, too.
Yeah, it was incredible.
On that car ride, what happened?
So on that car ride, Brandon started asking me a couple questions. And first, it was really simple. Where are you from? Are you originally from here? How long you been at the dealership? And standard stuff, right? And about probably 4 minutes into this conversation, Brandon starts asking me questions around more of what my goals are, my aspirations, my desires. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, this is interesting.
I'm trying to sell this dude a car. What
Yeah,
is he doing?
Exactly. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get this thing off the lot, and I'm going to get a nice commission check that I'm going to be able to take out at 22 years old and celebrate with my buddies this weekend. And as he started asking me these questions, it was really for the first time I was having somebody kind of get to my core in a way of like challenging my why and where I saw myself in my life. And in the university level, with friends, with family, I hadn't ever had someone actually ask me the type of questions that Brandon was asking me. The one question though that that Brandon started to hone in on, that was really, I'd say, the one that kind of did it for me, was he was really getting to, where do you see yourself? Like fast forward, 3 years, 5 years from now, Mason, share with me, like, what's your picture of success? What's happened in your life where this has been the best 3 to 5 years you could have ever imagined? And so I shared with him that I thought, someday if I can be the general manager of this dealership, making a solid six-figure income, driving a beautiful Italian exotic. I had made it, right? And for somebody who had grown up in the Southwest with a father who was a cowboy / antique dealer, making more than $23,000 a year was a big deal. And I was already making six figures passively through this dealership. And then what did you say back to me, Brandon?
So you told me, you said, well, I could see myself making because you were working part-time, going to school on a political scholarship, and you were making like 80 grand part-time. And you were like, look, I think I'm making 80 grand now. I could probably make like 350, 500 grand running the dealership. And I went, oh, that's disappointing, didn't I? And you were like, what do you mean that's disappointing? I said, well, I've met a lot of sharp people in my life, but you're one of the sharpest. Your people skills are phenomenal. You're a very likable guy. I'm just surprised that you would set your sights so low. And you were like offended.
I was offended. I remember thinking to myself, this guy doesn't know me. I barely met him for a matter of maybe 10, 12, 15 minutes. And you're challenging my dream or my vision of success for myself right out of the gate. And so, of course, I went to a defensive mechanism where I was like, you know what? My dream is actually good enough. And that's where, for the first time, somebody challenged me on it. Is enough really good enough? And when you think about what's possible, why settle for what's realistic? If you already know that in this dealership, your maximum upside is 350, why is that your ultimate when once you attain that, you're done? There's nothing further for you to be able to achieve here. And so you turn the conversation from me thinking $350,000, $400,000 would be a dream come true to really starting to ask me questions around what are my aspirations from like a net worth standpoint? What are my aspirations from a quality of life standpoint? And I'd never had somebody.
No, and you, in fact, you were like, dude, I after you got done being mad, you after you went through that whole gyration of, you don't know where I came from, and I don't come from money, and I'd never be able to own. Because here's my one question, and we talk about asking the right hard questions. I said to him simply, why would you want to work running the dealership versus owning the dealership? And he said, he got really defensive. I don't come from money, and I've never owned a business. And I said,
you know how much money it would take to be able to buy a business like this?
I went through, the whole thing. And what I said to him is, who has offered to show you, who's ever sat down and offered their time to show you how to actually own a business like this? And you said, nobody. And I said, don't make any decisions. Just give me your information. I'll give you mine. I run a meeting that talks about how to be a business owner. Why don't you come to it?
Yeah.
And I basically said, I'm going to start a new business in about a year, and I'm looking for someone that wants to build it with me, but you have to come every single week for a year to this program. And you were the one guy that came every single week. And you'd bring people with you, and then they'd say, I don't, whatever, and they'd move on.
Right.
And when I launched the business, I sat down with you at Applebee's and said, here's what we're going to build. If you're interested, you come in, you help me build it, and I'll show you how to build and own a business. And if you do the right things and stay the right amount of time and conquer it with me, I'll make you a partner.
Correct. And I would say if you sum up that, because that kind of engagement between Brandon and I, from being at the dealership to getting to know one another, to the Applebee's meeting, sharing a basket of mozzarella sticks and a couple hefts, to watching him in his financial services business, three key things I walked away with after that year that for any small business owners out there, any business owners in general thinking about what do they represent to their team, to their staff, and to future individuals that they're trying to attract. First for me was your picture of success, right? Your destination with where you saw yourself. It really inspired me in a way to where I had been on political campaigns. I had been in my family small business, meeting other business owners in the community that we were in. I'd been at the university pursuing my undergrad in business there as well. And never did I have somebody so clear and so passionate about what their vision was when it came to your vision for what you wanted to build in this hearing care company. The second piece that I walked away with after that year was how serious is he really about this? Because I had met a lot of people at that point, a lot of big money individuals that came into the Ferrari dealership, but very few actually showed me that they were sincere and willing to put the time, the energy, the commitment to actually making that vision, that dream, that destination become a reality. And after spending 12 months with you, I saw that every day you lived it. Every day you woke up, you thought about it, you talked about it. It was in everything that you did. And so from a confidence standpoint, not only did I have this inspiration from your picture, but the second piece was I was dead set that you were going to figure this out. If there was anybody I've ever met that was sincere about figuring out this business and this opportunity, this guy was. Lastly, the thing that never changed for me and the key ingredient for all of this was a question that you asked me when you first made me the offer, and I want to go back to that. And that was, I'll never forget this. I was in downtown Portland. Brandon called me. I'm on my fancy flip phone of a cell phone at the time, and Brandon essentially makes me this offer. And the offer was, I want you to come on board, be my outbound caller, be my first employee, and congratulations, I'm going to pay you a whopping $41,000. And I remember I kind of stopped. I'm on the sidewalk in downtown Portland, and I thought to myself, $41,000? What an insult. I mean, I told this guy I'm already making close to 90, and that's part-time. And I'm just wrapping up my undergrad in business. Like, this future that I have, I think, is so bright, right? And you're offering me $41,000. And so I pushed back on you, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I've got a condo that I just leased. I have a BMW that I just leased. I've got a fancy lifestyle that I want to live here that all requires credit cards that I need to make payments on. $41,000 is not going to cut it for this 22, almost 23-year-old young man. And you asked me this one question. And you said, Mason, before you answer this question, I want you to think about it, because the answer that you provide is going to determine whether or not you pursue net worth in your life or you pursue income. And I stop and I'm like, okay, what's the question? And he says, how can you ask me to invest in you if you are unwilling to invest in yourself?
Yep.
And that right there, I thought, you know what? He's spot on. He's right. If I'm unwilling to invest in myself, then how can I ever ask my employer, my business partner, somebody I look to invest in me?
And you said, what am I going to do with my BMW and my condo? I said, You're going to get rid of all of it. You're going to move into a little crappy rental house we have, and you're going to drive my old Enron purchased auction Dodge pickup truck, and you're going to drive that for 2 years to prove to me that you want this worse than anybody else, because I'm not looking for an employee. I'm looking for a future business partner. Yeah. And this is how you earn your equity. This is how you get the opportunity. And you said, all right, dude, I'm all in. Now, the interesting note on this is to counter that, when you announced you were leaving the Ferrari dealership, the owner of the Ferrari dealership actually asked to meet with you and told you he would make you a manager and boost your income to like 150 grand. So you had to say no to that, to the point where he worked you so hard, you actually asked me to come in, because I was a customer at this point, and I was also friends with him. You asked me to come in and meet with him because he tried to tell you, are you sure you're making, he was doing the father thing, are you sure you're making a good decision? You could be making a life-altering, horrible choice here. Right. And you said, could you come meet with him and talk to him about what we're doing? And I went and met with him with you. And we talked to him, and he looked at you and he said, you're gonna kill this thing. Yeah. This is a great choice for you.
But I think that's a great point, because from a short-term perspective, all my friends were like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving to go with this guy that you met at Applebee's, and he kind of presented this business case when you have a six-figure opportunity in your current role, in your current employer? And I shared the fact that long-term, I'm not going to be able to create net worth and quality of life. And if anything, what he brings to the table, meaning you, Brandon, I really did feel like you were going to invest in me. And that was something that I'd never really felt before. And as I thought about the dealership, they're willing to invest in me from a six-figure standpoint, right? They were willing to, by the time the whole kind of, my exit wrapped up, the owner was literally offering me almost $250,000 a year in a package to stay, and you were offering me $41,000, right? Right. But I knew inside me, right? This is where I would encourage all of us that are out there, that are team members, that are employees. If you have that voice inside you, right? If you've had that gut intuition, if you've had that desire where you have felt something where you wanted to go out there and do something really big, really meaningful, and have a great quality of life, never give up on that, right? And because I felt for the first time in meeting you, here was the secret to potentially unlocking my potential success in a mentor, not just an employer. And there was a big difference there with what I had at the dealership, which was a great employer, a great package, great income. It was safe, it was comfortable, and I knew within reason I could make it work, to risking everything, but to gain the knowledge of a mentor that would truly invest in me personally, professionally, was well worth it for me. And for entrepreneurs that wonder how to attract people like Mason,
I wouldn't talk to Mason about the things the other guys were talking about. I'd say, that sounds like a great secure job until they don't need you anymore. That sounds like a great transactional job, but what are they going to do to teach you to create a net worth so that you don't need to show up to work every day? And I would just keep asking them the questions to where you drew your logical conclusion. And then there was another guy that popped up, took you on a yacht. He had like a 200-foot yacht or something, and he offered you like a $500,000 package and all this stuff. And you know why? Because your confidence to go with me was so strong that people could feel and sense that confidence, and they were stepping up their offers to try to get you because they thought, this guy's in such high demand. And I don't think employees like that are out there thinking about the job market, I don't think they do a good enough job of positioning themselves to where when they do something, there are people that are trying to get them versus just, okay, well, we missed that one, because they haven't presented the one thing that you did very intentionally was always present yourself. You were always present. You were always professional. You were always like, here's, I brought a bottle of wine, or I'd be sitting there somewhere having dinner, and all of a sudden someone say, a Mason called in and picked up your check, and I'd be like, why was he buying my check? And you say, thank you for the opportunity. Right. And you were very conscientious about how you made your relationships and commitments, which only solidified in my mind during this whole process, this is the right guy, right? You gave all those other opportunities up, and we kind of laugh about it in the future, because the dealership that was offering you the huge package ended up going out of business when 08, 09, and 10 hit. Right. The Ferrari dealership transferred the business to their kids, so you would have been stuck with the kids, right? Which great guys, but
they sold the other dealerships.
They sold the other dealerships, but you'd always be working for them.
Right.
And now here you fast forward and we sell the business, and we'll go back and talk about it. But here you are actually in a place where 15 years later, you're worth $10 million. You're a customer of the Ferrari dealership. You're somebody that all those people look up to you and think that, and recognize that you've made these huge monumental life decisions that resulted in what you said was what you were going to chase, right? What you and I both were aspiring to do. But we get going in the grind, and I think what we're going to do, Will, is this will be a 2-part, because it's going to be a great message. But we get going, and we make those first, we drop those first, some funny things. We did our own mailers, and I often laugh at this because I introduced the company. We hijacked, a buddy of mine had this little technology where people in the Army could make a video, send them to their family. The families could shoot a little video, send them back, and they could email them back and forth. And I said, video technology. So I shot an introduction to Audigy Group and emailed it to all the contacts that we had. And we could watch who they forwarded it to. And I thought, this would be a great business. This is 2 years before YouTube, and had this whole strategy to create this new video e-commerce platform where people could watch a video and actually buy stuff. And I was getting distracted from the real business, and I just want to point out that had I pursued that, it'd probably be worth 20 billion, 25 billion right now. But nonetheless, we literally licked. For those of you millennials, you used to lick the envelopes with your tongue and then seal them and send the mail out, which now you just hit push and email goes out. But we emailed several hundred of these envelopes introducing the company.
Mailed, yeah.
And I went out and bought Mason and I 2 brand new Trio phones. This is state-of-the-art stuff in 2004, right? And we went to our first meeting in a surprise industry meeting. We walked in down in Tucson, Arizona, where Mason was from. And we walked into the room, and I'll never forget it. We walk in, and we're standing in this suite talking about what we're going to do, and all of a sudden, the 800 number on both our phones started ringing. And it had that Trio. Do you remember that Trio sound? Yeah. I don't remember it. And we look at each other, and he looks at me, and I look at him, and it was obvious because it was the 800 number that we used for the new business. And he looks at me, I look at him, and he goes, "You gonna get it?" And I go, "The owner of a business never answers his own phone." And he's like, "Dude, I don't even know what to say to this guy." I'm thinking
to myself, I'm 23. I had a flip phone 2 weeks ago. I barely know how to operate this, Trio smartphone, and I don't even know what to say. I just graduated college. And he looks at me and he's like, "The owner is never going to answer the first call." That just doesn't make sense. And I looked at him and I was like, "Really?" So I answered it. "Hi, welcome to Audigy. How can we help you?"
And what do we do with you?
What do we do?
What do we do after talking to you? But we ended up having a great call. We got a whole bunch of calls, and we started the process of pushing people into our funnel. Another interesting side note on this is his father knew that he had these other choices. His father is a true Tucson guy with his own his own business where he traded stuff, and it was an antique store
Antique
where
shop,
and he
right.
loved trading things and everything. But he's from Tucson. So this is the first time I physically met his father and his mother. And we're sitting there on the couch, and his father comes in, and consequently his sister was interning with us. And I was telling her I'm not going to pay her a lot of money. She was our first marketing person. And so his dad, his mom, and I are sitting in the room.
Here.
It's the first time that I've met him. And his dad sits down, and he's looking at me like this. And I thought, his dad's not very friendly. And his dad says, I'm going to ask you a question. I go, what? Yes, sir. He said, what are you doing with my kids? I go, I'm working with them, sir. And he said, he could be making a lot more money than working with you. Are you using him? I go, using him, sir. He said, are you taking advantage of my boy? I looked at Mason, and at that point, I was a little bit scared to shitless because
as
his
his
dad
blue
carried a
heeler's
big
growling,
gun.
and he has his Ruger, Blackhawk model on his hip.
And his spurs on his boots, and I was like, I was petrified. I'm like, sir, I promise you, we're gonna do the right thing. Fast forward, the year we were selling the business, we were all sitting there, and we told him what we did and how much we were gonna get.
Right.
And he just was just
cried.
stunned. And your sister stayed still. She's an EVP in the company. She did exceptionally
She had a
well.
7-figure opportunity as well. I mean, it changed our entire family for generations to come. And I think what I want to say is in those early moments, in those early stages, you have to really know yourself. Meaning, for me, from a early part of my life, I knew that I wanted certain things from a quality of life, to be able to provide for my family, put a roof over their head, provide an opportunity for us to have new vehicles, things that I didn't have growing up. And so part of that motivation came from me not having things as a child and a young man, that I remember thinking, someday I'm not going to put my child or my son or my family through this. Those same things made me, I think, stronger and more confident in being able to stand up for what I wanted and what I believed. But what I was also searching for, that I had back home in Arizona, was this feeling of family, this feeling of partnership. I never wanted a job. And I remember sitting there in my undergrad, as I'm going through business course after business course and going through career fair after career fair, and everyone was talking about get a job, be an employee, show up, do XYZ for a paycheck, and then go home, and then come back and do it all over again next week, and the week after that, and the month after that. And I thought, there has to be a better way. Like, I don't want to waste one moment of this journey being an employee, clocking in, clocking out. And so I knew that I did not want what the mainstream system said was good enough, which is why when I did meet Brandon, it was like a breath of fresh air. Like, somebody finally resonated with me in a way that I could see myself wanting to become what he represented. So when you think about carrying yourself as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, there are a lot of people, I guarantee you, like me out there, that are not searching for jobs, that don't just want a paycheck. We want to be a part of something. We want to build something. We want to dig deep. We want to innovate. But I need to feel that as much as I see it in the way of a job and a title and a role. I need to feel that from the business owner. And I felt that from every step of the way with you.
And I think what we're going to do, this is going to be a 2-part podcast, because it's really important for business owners and for aspiring intrapreneurs, people that want to, they don't necessarily have a position where they can just go start a business,
right? Yeah.
But they want to find themselves in the right relationship with the right kind of business where they can pursue their passion and their joy. The whole art in building a big, valuable system or business is a business owner who understands the more of those people they can attract into their environment.
Bingo. Right.
And the more they can align their long-term goals, because the one thing I talk about is the future self.
Correct.
Everyone's in their present self, and their present self is making decisions off their past self. So they're really small decisions. They're thinking too small, and they're communicating too small. And so business owners, because of that, are talking too small to a guy like you, because if I was sitting there talking about you making 50 or 75 grand over the next 5 years, you'd have taken a $350,000 job.
Never would have,
And you would have always been a guy that did exceptionally well. It's just that none of us know, and I would have been a guy that did exceptionally well, but when you were able to bring that horsepower together and that shared, and plus we loved every minute of fighting in the battles. Like finding somebody that you'd love to battle with, that you're having fun with, that you can support each other and find yourself in challenges and work through them, that's growing together while you're growing the business.
And everyone talks around how important it is to find, that spouse and that significant other and, somebody to share your life with. But yet we don't really think about or discuss that when it comes to who you're going to align with from a business standpoint. And why not? We should, right? I mean, we're going to spend more time as a team member, right? As an employee in a business than sometimes I will even in my own home. So if I'm going to spend all this time to make sure I find the perfect person or the person that really complements who I am, that really represents what I want to also become in a couple, why would I not look for that in my employer? Why would I not look for that in my business partner? And so one thing for me was I was never looking for a job, but it was Brandon's vision of what he had in this picture of opportunity that really resonated with me in a way to where I felt like I was not going to be your employee. I felt like I was going to be able to join you in this journey that you were going to be on. And even though I didn't have the idea, even though I didn't have the capital, even though I didn't have maybe all the experience, what you were looking for was somebody that was willing to truly invest, be fully committed, and demonstrate that in all that I did. Was I willing to embody the vision and the passion, the excitement that you had for this picture of what this company could be? And if so, you were wanting to build a team of partners. And so from day one, he never made me feel like I was only an outbound caller, I was only a manager, or I was only making $41,000. I always felt like we were one and the same.
Yeah, and to the extent where you were so inspired and committed to our plan that you were out selling all our future employees your own ecosystem on why they should come join us. You recruited your sister into the deal.
Right.
Your sister came along, and she worked herself from an intern,
marketing intern,
to an EVP of operations and marketing over the last 15 years.
Yeah.
You went and did a talk at your university, and we recruited your current wife, who came in, and she worked herself his only wife. But the funny story here is she was one of my absolute best people, and she worked directly for me, building programs that are still a staple of the organization. You were running marketing, you were running the sales recruiting side. Your sister was running the marketing side. We all three worked together, and then you had to go and fall in love and marry her and have babies. And then she decided not to come back, which was a great choice because you have such a beautiful family. But the point here is, Mason was a conduit to a whole bunch of really your friends came to work for us. We recruited our first pool of people, were all people you had a relationship with, and they were all people that you had filtered in your personal life that had aspirations and ambitions to do big things. And so we had a family environment, but we had a hard environment. Like I would say to you guys, when anybody that was maybe not thinking correctly, I would keep you guys well programmed. His sister told me, I'm not in this to make money like Mason. I'm just in it to have a great job. And I said, can you do me a favor? She said, what? I said, can you leave my office? She said, leave your office? I said, yeah. She goes, why? And I said, because until you respect the fact that you should be paid for the contributions you bring to the organization and you believe in that, I can't believe in you. So you need to leave. You need to think about this conversation. And when you're prepared to have the right conversation, you need to come back. An hour later, she came back. She stayed. Yeah. And then she made a lot of money because she was entitled and deserved it and worked hard for it. And then when we sold the business, she participated in the sale of the business. That was life-changing for her as well. 100%. So being hard, teaching you guys like I was your coach, not your boss.
But I would say the real key to that was that from an early place, Brandon didn't necessarily talk about budgets and targets in the traditional way that, here's your job, you need to make X number of calls, and at the end of the year, you need to have this much business that you brought in. He always shared where he saw the company potentially being, right? He always had this big picture, and then he would back into it and say, one of my goals in ensuring that we achieve this vision is that we bring, that I bring a whole team with me that are able to participate in that success. So what I really want to understand, Mason, are what are the motivations that are driving you long term, right? Like if you have this, amazing success after 10 years, what does life look like? And then he would use that information in a way to where when we'd sit down, he would be having the conversation with me, not necessarily like, Mason, you didn't make the appropriate number of calls, you didn't hit your budget, you didn't hit your revenue number. He would sit with me and say, Mason, I'm challenged right now because based around your performance, the business isn't going to be able to invest in you in these 3 areas that you said were absolutely critical to your happiness in this year. And so what I want to know, Mason, is what do we need to do to help you be in a place to where these goals become a reality as this year comes to a close? And I'd always leave that meeting feeling like he's not mad or irritated or disappointed that I'm not meeting a target. He's disappointed and challenged that he can't invest in helping me get the things that I told him were so important to me. And he's confused as to whether or not, are they no longer important to me, or are we as a business not supporting you in the way that we need to for you to be able to achieve that?
Yep, and then if it was things that we needed to do or invest in as a business, or if you said to me, I can't figure it out, I need you to come roll up your sleeves, we'd bang out 100 phone calls, record them all, go sit at the house till midnight and go through what language are we using, how are we engaging, how do we move things along, and we worked as a team in every aspect of the business. And I think the thing here is it was never easy for either of us. But we accepted the fact that, hey, we've got a war, we're in a battle, and we need to survive this together. And how do we do that? What's the best outcome we can create? How do we move through the challenges we have? And how do we sneak up on everybody and build our network and catch them all off guard by the language we're talking to the business partners we wanted to create? How do we find the best people and hold them accountable? Now, one of the things that's interesting is, along the way, and this is another thing that you and I know business owners struggle with, along the way, we needed to bring different levels of competency into the business, from like legal and structural and operational and technology. And so I would go out and hire different people. And along the way, you'd have to endure somebody all of a sudden coming in as a new boss between you and I. And that was a struggle. I'd like you to talk a little bit about your view of that at those times.
Yeah, and this is kind of the the challenge of when you look at your culture in any business, you are trying to create a community. You're trying to create an ecosystem where there is a feeling that the team truly seems to be able to nurture and engage in, that inspires them to want to succeed, right? We've always talked about success as a feeling. So Brandon from day one was very adamant that we were always communicating. Communication was so powerful. The energy in the environment was absolutely critical. And so you felt like we were one. And then when new leadership would come in based around certain cycles of the business, certain initiatives or objectives that we had, not always did that feeling resonate with the new leadership right out of the gate. And often, I think, especially for any of us that are new to a team, we come in and we want to try to manage the business. And that's where I felt like, I wasn't interested in being managed. Never in my life did I want to, have somebody manage me, dictate, or tell me what I needed to do. Maybe that's because of, me being on that, millennial cusp, right? But at the same time, I think a lot of us that believe in ourselves want to be able to be a partner, not somebody that needs to be managed. So when these individuals would come in, I would get frustrated. I would get upset, and I would come to Brandon in more of a mindset of, woe is me, I'm irritated, I'm disappointed. How could you bring this person in when they don't respect the team, they don't understand how hard we've worked? And Brandon would always be really respectful of the individual that he brought in, as well as of my feelings, and essentially have a conversation with me around the fact that, Mason, I'm sitting in this position and I've earned this opportunity in a way to where I ask that you trust that the people that I am bringing in, I'm bringing in for the right reasons. You may not necessarily understand at this stage why maybe I brought certain individuals in, but do you trust the fact that I've demonstrated to you every step of the way that I've had your back? And I would say, yes, you have. And you'd say, well, then I need to ask that you have my back for making the decision of bringing this person in, and in return, giving them the benefit of the doubt that they want what we all want, which is for this business to succeed. So why don't you take a different approach, Mason? Why don't you go to them and ask them some questions around what their picture is, where they want to basically take this department, and then ask them what is their level of confidence that they have the tools in their toolbox to be able to get there. And if they share with you that maybe there's some gaps there, maybe there's some challenges that they don't exactly have a plan for, then ask them if you could assist them with that. Would they be willing to work more closely with you, and in return, partner with you on some key initiatives within this area? And I thought, all right, fair enough. He asked me to trust him. He asked me to give him the benefit of the doubt that if he hasn't steered me wrong, that this is an individual that obviously has something that they're going to bring to the table. And then he's challenged me on, have I really sat with them to understand maybe what their needs are, and in return, how I can support them? And so instead of having this victim mentality, It was more of this mindset shift of now, all right, I'm going to be thinking about this, and in return, how can I do a little bit more in helping them versus expecting that they need to help me all the time.
And I would I would ask you, okay, so we brought this person in, let's say operations or on finance side, and I'd say to you, let me ask you a question. If we didn't bring this person in, are you capable of doing what their experience level has allowed them to succeed in? Are you capable of doing that right now? And you'd say,
No.
well, no. And I'd say, so you have two choices, right? You could be upset that I brought them in, or you could be a student of what they bring to the table and learn. Because if you have bosses over the next 10 years and you become an expert in the things they're an expert in, one day, if you do all the things right, you have the right attitude, you treat the people the right way, and you grow those competencies, one day you could replace any or all of those guys at the top. But if you don't learn how to do the business that they know how to do, how will you ever have the overall competency to run a total organization versus a piece of an organization?
And you also said that same breath, which I'll never forget. And you said, how are certain individuals making you feel, right? And I shared with Brandon that I'm a little frustrated in this, and I'm a little challenged with how they've approached this. And he says, that's excellent. Remember that. Because that pain you're feeling right now will shape, if you allow it, new systems in your operating platform internally to where you will always remember when you finally get into that position the way that you feel today. And hopefully, as a result, you will be stronger and better, and then not doing that when you're in that role with others.
Yeah, I said learn, take a journal.
Right.
And write down the attributes of the technical aspect and the cultural aspect of how these people engage. Because if you edified the best of every one of these people over the course of 5 or 10 years as you ascend in the organization, and you eliminate the things that they're doing wrong or the way they're making you feel poorly, you'll be such a well-rounded leader that you by nature be able to ascend over all of them because they're not focused on those things themselves, or they wouldn't be here.
Right.
They would be running their own business or doing something bigger. And so you always took it as, I said, look, it's a temporary situation unless you make it permanent.
Correct.
If you lower your ambitions, if you lower your attitude, if you become a victim of circumstances versus a student of the experience, the wisdom, and their engagement, so you can learn all that. And you know, and I wasn't short for words with those guys. I mean, you watch me bring outside executives in, put them in charge, and if they didn't go on the right line, then they didn't last either, right?
Yeah. No, I will say there was a degree of discipline at every stage. The earliest stage, over the last 15 years, that Brandon always demonstrated, and I think as business owners as well as team members, to where it's every day we can make reasons or excuses of why we're going to accept a average result or allow for comfort to set in. And Brandon I felt like every day was as if it was a fight for what was possible, and this could be our only day. And so from a level of accountability, he definitely was very direct and I would say very specific in his expectations that always seemed to be extremely high, but it challenged the environment and the culture to never allow ourselves to get complacent and to always push the envelope, because if we could do 10% more tomorrow and then 10% the day after that and then 10% more the day after that, what was possible just by the end of the week from where we started on Monday to where we could end on Friday. And so we did, that's where these incremental steps, there weren't giant leaps, but those incremental steps with Brandon holding the environment, leadership, and demonstrating the rest of us that if you're not all in, then you need to go, because I'm not going to sacrifice my dream, my vision for your mediocrity.
Or the commitment I made.
Or the commitment that I made to the team that is all in.
Yeah.
And so we have to think about that when we think about our businesses. You do have absolutely your top 20% that want to be all in with you. Then there's this other 80%. Some are kind of there, some are just floating along, some aren't sure where they want to be. But those 20%, you have to make sure that you're in lockstep with, and then you're also demonstrating those 20% that you have their back. And that's something that Brandon demonstrated through his leadership.
So thank you for listening to part 1 of the B. Dawson Show with Mason Walker and how to become the intrapreneur or the 10X employee.